So at this point, I'm pleased to present Mr. Ed Zamora of the Principia organization. Mr. Zamora is a retired financial aid officer with many years of college funding experience. Principia is an organization co-founded by Mr. Zamora to help families better understand and navigate the college funding process.
Start the show first, I guess. Can everyone in the back hear me? We good in the back? Yes, no? Good? I have it. Up, down, good. How about over here? We good? You guys want, you can come back over here. A lot more screen here, a lot of space, make some friends. You guys want to come on down a little bit further? Makes it a lot easier for everyone. You don't? Perfectly fine. Once again, my name is Ed Zamora. I'm actually one of the co-founders of Principia. Our goal today is basically to explain the whole financial aid process. We pretty much go over everything. All the rules, the deadlines, the forms, everything necessary for the financial aid process. If at any point in time I lose you, or if you have a question, raise your hand. I'm actually here with one of my associates, Kelly. Kelly, wave the audience. Kelly, keep waving. Camera's on you. Don't get nervous. Thank you, Kelly. Kelly and I have actually worked together now for close to 7 years. We actually, the last university we were both at was Fairleigh Dickinson University, basically a block or two from here. Both of us have essentially seen everything. We've seen divorce, separated, incarcerated, adoption, parents in the picture, parents not in the picture. We've helped parents with the Madoff scam. So we pretty much have helped out at every level. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, just raise your hand. I myself have been in financial aid for close to 15 years, so essentially I've seen everything. This year, however, everything has changed from previous years. So if you've done financial aid forms for students a year ago or a year past, everything is changing on the financial aid end. So throughout today's presentation, if something pops up that's new to you, you've already done the form before, and you have questions, just raise your hand. Now the first thing we go over today's presentation, of course, is the FAFSA form, which is the most important form for all of you. Everyone here will be doing the FAFSA form. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, by the end you will. Some of you here will also do a form called the CSS profile. In the world of financial aid, a few years ago, there's typically only 2 forms to fill out, the FAFSA form and the CSS profile. Now there's up to 5 different financial aid forms to fill out. The FAFSA form for everyone, the CSS profile for more elite colleges, the state New Jersey, the HESA, they also want their own form for state aid. Then you have what's known as IDOCS, which is information given to the college board. On top of that, certain schools want their own institutional forms, such as Princeton, UPenn, Lehigh. Those schools have the FAFSA, the CSS, and their own documents to fill out for the school specifically. Okay? We're going to go over all the forms, all the deadlines, all the due dates, and everything else. Once again, if I lose anyone, just raise your hand. Now, the first slide we show here is actually more to do what's going on in college right now than actually the financial aid situation about you guys going into college a year from now. Unfortunately, most students are not graduating 4-year programs anymore in 4 years. Many students are taking 5 years on average to graduate a 4-year institution. At the private schools, it's a lot less prevalent than it is at the public universities, i.e. the TCNJs, the Penn States, the Marylands. It's actually been statistically proven that typically only 1 out of 4 students going to a public university will graduate within 4 years. The other 75+% of students are taking 5 years or longer. At the private schools, it's about a 50-50 chance. Now the main reason this is happening is because of this right here. Okay? You might not understand this at this point in time, but as I go through it, you will better understand what's going on. Pretty much every college that your student's going to, any 4-year program, communications, business, journalism, they all require between 124 to about 128 college credits to graduate. In the world of college, it's not like high school. Your student doesn't go from freshman year, the next academic year, sophomore year, the next academic year, junior year. It's done by college credit. Does everyone understand so far? Good. Now, pretty much every term, the fall and spring semesters of every school, your student is allowed to take anywhere from 12 to 18 credits. You should write that down. My student can take 12 to 18 credits, and you're still paying the same tuition rate. Does everyone understand so far? Okay, good. Now the problem is, what typically happens is this. When your students go into freshman year at almost every 4-year college, the schedule is already made up for them for the fall semester. And what most colleges do to help ease the student into the college environment is they give them the bare minimum full-time credits, which is 12 credits. Does everyone see the problem here? Now, what typically happens, unfortunately, at all the colleges is many students realize if I'm only taking 12 credits, the bare minimum to be a full-time student, I have enough time to do my homework, go to class, socialize, hang out. I'm going to do the same thing next semester, in the spring. I'm going to take 12 credits again. The next semester in the sophomore year, freshman year, 12 credits again. The problem is, if your student only takes 12 credits per semester, minimum full-time, after 4 years, they have 96 college credits. Does everyone see the problem here? They're 24 credits short of graduating on time. Now, the reason we go over this in the beginning is because of this reason. In the world of college, in about 99% of schools, there is no such thing as a 5-year scholarship. There is no such thing as a 5-year grant. Does everyone see the problem here? Which means if your student enters a 5th year in a 4-year program, most, if not all, financial aid, the free money, is gone. Does everyone understand so far? Very important. So what can we do? Number one, we have to make sure they take at least 15 credits per semester, or average 15 credits per semester. As long as your student averages the 15 credits, fall and spring, all 4 years, at the end of the 4th year, they have 120 credits. They're in line to graduate on time. Now, the easiest way to make sure that this happens is very simple. When your student gets dropped off at the university they're going to, okay, the one you deposited, the one you're moving them into, every school has what's known as a FERPA form, F-E-R-P-A. The FERPA form at the college level allows the student to put anyone's name on the FERPA, giving them access to their academic information. As long as your student puts your name on the FERPA, you can call that school and ask them, what's their GPA? How many credits do they have? How many credits are they taking? You can even ask, are they even going to class? If you do not have a FERPA form on file, a school can legally not answer a single question. Does everyone understand? Okay? As long as their name's on that form, you can ask any question you want. Now, if you call the records office or the billing office and ask them whether the form is in or not, how much we owe you, they'll tell you the exact amount. Because you realize you are paying the bill. When it comes to academics, they're not going to tell you anything. It's a legal issue. Okay? The reason you get the FERPA done is not to be the help of the parent that's looking over your student every week, making sure they're going to class, making sure they're doing everything you want them to do. The reason you do the FERPA form is to make sure they graduate on time, because there's no teenager out there that understands what $40,000 is, or $50,000, or if you're looking at Massachusetts, $60,000 across the board for all the colleges. Does everyone understand? Good. Now let's start talking about the cost. On average, the average public university in the United States ranges between $12,000 and up. Unfortunately, here in the tri-state area, we have the most expensive public universities and, unfortunately, private universities. Our public universities start at $14,000 and go to $32,000 a year. On the private side, here in New Jersey, you're looking at costs between $40,000 to $50,000. And to make matters worse, there are some actually colleges out there, you see here, that have now crossed over the $70,000 mark. NYU is one of 3 colleges this academic year that is now over $70,000. USC, California, another $70,000 college. Every school you see on here increases their rate of cost every year between 3 to 8%, which means all of these colleges here will also be over $70,000 a year. Now you're probably sitting there wondering, why did I come out? Freezing, will I retire? Why did I have kids in the first place? Where did it all go wrong? In your mind right now. And that's why the guidance office asks us to come in to explain the process. The first thing you have to understand is this. The term financial aid in no way means free money. You have to understand that. The term financial aid actually means 2 things. First, it means self-help, which is loans and work study. And the second part of financial aid is gift aid, grants, and scholarships. Because as you'll notice throughout this whole process, every college fair, every open house, no matter where you go, whatever representative you're talking to, admissions or financial aid from that college, if you ask them, can we get financial aid, the answer is always yes. The reason the answer is always yes is because to get a loan in college is very simple. And since loans are part of financial aid, that's why they always say yes to you. Don't worry, we'll give you financial aid, because they know they can help you get a loan. The next part of the question should always be, okay, we can get financial aid. How much gift aid do you typically give out? Gift aid is the actual term for free money, grants and scholarship, the money you don't have to pay back. The stuff that more likely you guys are looking for more than the loans and the work program. Okay? Any questions about the financial aid process as far as grants or scholarships or loans? No? Okay. Now, how do we get financial aid? Two reasons the schools give you guys financial aid. First reason is academics. Your student has a high GPA, high SAT, high ACT score. Second reason is what's known as financial need. Your family has a financial need to send your student off to that institution. I'm first going to start off with the academic stuff and the scholarship money, and then we're going to talk about the need-based in a moment. The reason that students receive financial aid based on, or essentially merit-based aid or scholarship money, first reason is academics. Your student has a good GPA, good SAT score, good ACT score. Pretty much every college's scholarship program starts with at least a B average. So for academics, you're looking for an 80 or a B average. That's kind of the floor, the minimum you can have. The second part is typically the SATs or ACTs. Most colleges give out scholarship on the lowest end of the scholarship range are looking for an SAT score of 500 math, 500 critical reading, or essentially 1,000 points between those two sections. On the SAT, the critical reading and the math are the two important parts. Of course, for junior parents, SAT is changing in March, so it's only going to be math and critical reading at that point. But if you're taking the test anytime soon, it's those two sections that you're looking to get to at least 1,000. On the ACT, they look for a score typically of 20 to 22 for scholarship consideration on the low end. Now, let's say you've done the SAT, you've done the ACT, you've gone to the tutor, you've gone to the different prep courses, and it's not working out. Very simple. What you can do is this. There's a website called fairtest.org. FAIRTEST. Fairtest.org. Free website, has a bunch of different colleges on there, hundreds of different colleges that are SAT, ACT optional. Montclair State is SAT, ACT optional. They went so last year. Technically, this year, Ramapo is also SAT, ACT optional. Fairfield, Ithaca, Merritt, American University, Wake Forest, George Washington University this year went SAT, ACT optional. If your student isn't able to get the test scores, it doesn't mean they have to bring down their list of schools as far as tiers, okay? You can still have reach schools and higher tier schools, because a lot of them are going SAT, ACT optional. If the scoring isn't there for the test sites, I suggest you go on the website, research the information to add different schools to help your cause. The second level of scholarship money comes from athletics. Let's say your students get good at football, or baseball, or basketball. There is scholarship out there for them as well, but it depends on the division of the college. Division I schools have a lot of money for athletics. Division II schools have a little bit of money, and Division III schools cannot give out any athletic money whatsoever. The third level of scholarship money from the university, it's typically what's known as restricted scholarships, or essentially alumni-based monies. And what happens at a lot of these colleges is scholarship money is given to the university by alumni to give out to different individuals. Now, the alumni themselves decide what the criteria are. Some are based on background, some on culture. To give you an example, at Lehigh University, there's a $2,500 scholarship for your student if they're part of the marching band. At Princeton University, there's a $12,000 scholarship at Princeton if your family had anything to do with steamboating. Now, some of these make sense, some of these don't make any sense at all. You know? The easiest way to find out about scholarship money is very simple. Contact the admissions office. Pretty much every college, the financial aid office has nothing to do with giving out scholarships. It's typically the admissions office that handles all the scholarship money. The admissions office is the most informed office you'll be dealing with. You can call them and ask them any questions you like. If you're doing an open house or a tour, I suggest you bring 3 items with you. First thing you should always have with you, a copy of the student's resume, showing everything they've done in the high school time frame, 3 or 4 years they've been here. Their community service, their work experience, etc., achievements, honors, and all that stuff should be on their resume. That should be with you on the tour or the open house. Second, a copy of their unofficial transcript, which can be gotten from the guidance office, basically showing the class they've taken, the GPA, the the actual grade point average from every course they've taken. And the third thing you should always have with you, a copy of their test scores. Print right from College Board for the SATs, or right on ACT.org for the ACT scores. If you bring those three things with you, and you sit down with an admissions rep, you can basically say, based on our information, what do you think? You'd be surprised how often the school will come back and say, well, based on the community service, or based on the GPA, based on the SAT scores, we typically give this amount of scholarship aid. That way you know during your tour, okay, we're not accepted yet, but we know based on our academics and everything else, we can expect somewhere near $10, $15, or $20,000 worth of scholarship money before you fill out a single financial aid form. Does everyone understand? Good. Now here is our first formula. This is essentially how pretty much every college, from county to Harvard, all of them combined, figure out if you have financial need and if they should be helping you, financially speaking, with financial aid assistance. The first part of this equation is the cost of attendance. Cost of attendance for school costs, everything included. I'll show you what goes in that in a moment. The second part is expected family contribution, or what's known as the EFC. The EFC is the most important number you will have in this entire process. The expected family contribution is the number they expect you to pay towards the cost of college for one student. I'll show you how to calculate this in a moment as well. So you take the cost of the school, subtract out what they expect you to pay. What's left over is the financial need. This is what the school should help you with in scholarships, grants, loans, or work programs. Okay. Now here is what goes with the cost of attendance. Cost of attendance is not tuition and room and board. Cost of attendance is everything included. It's tuition, room and board, books, transportation to the college in the fall, and then back home in the spring, as well as miscellaneous expenses, which are new student fee, technology fee, lab fee, some of the colleges, I think the heating fee and oil fee. All these different fees will add anywhere from $1,000 to $5,000 on top of everything else. So we're make sure we get all these numbers. Very simple. If the college is not able to give you the average book cost or the average transportation cost, etc., the best place you can go is collegeboard.com. Okay? On College Board, it gives you all this information for every college. All you have to do is plug in the school's name on the College Board search. On the website, you close up a profile. On that profile, it'll show you the tuition cost, the room and board cost, average book cost, in some cases even the average miscellaneous cost. That way you guys have a better idea what the school costs, everything included, not just 2 or 3 of the 5 or 6 different factors. College Board will be the most helpful resource in this entire process. We're going to refer to College Board about a dozen times throughout this presentation, by the way, and it's a free website. So it's a very good free website. It's typically updated every 6 weeks. Now here are the first 2 forms you guys are filling out. The form on the left is filled out by everyone, whether your students go to County or go to technical school, Harvard, Wharton, Penn, Carnegie, any school you're looking at, the first form you have to fill out, or essentially the form is used by everyone, regardless of standing or private or public or Ivy or not, everyone uses the FAFSA form. There's always a myth out there, I hear from parents all the time, and by the way, we work with pretty much every high school in this area, Summit, Oratory, Penn Place, Morristown, Mountain Lakes. It's always the same thing. Well, my neighbor filled out the FAFSA, and they didn't get anything. Why should we fill out the FAFSA? Very simple. Every year I've ever worked in financial aid, at every college I've ever worked for, it's never not happened that every summer, basically roughly around the first week of August, I have a family come into my office. The first thing they say is, Ed, I lost my job. Ed, I lost my spouse, medical issues. Across the board, there's always been something that pops up before the student moves in a week from now or 2 weeks from now. The first question I ask, because I have to ask the financial aid officer, and every school, Rutgers, Princeton, all the financial aid officers will ask you the same thing. Did you fill out the FAFSA form? Once you say, no, I didn't fill it out because I wasn't going to get anything, or no, I didn't fill it out because I didn't know, or no for whatever reason, they cannot help you. Does everyone understand so far? If you do the FAFSA form, and you know you're not going to get anything, think about it as an insurance policy. It covers you financially on the financial aid end, just in case something happens. Because the parents who come in and say, no, I didn't fill it out, I have to say as a financial aid officer, and every school's financial aid officer has to say this, we need you to fill it out, and then when we get the information, then we'll help you. What they typically don't tell you is, in August, the FAFSA probably won't be processed and gone through the system for anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks. Your student moves in next week. Does everyone see the problem here? Okay? Same situation. And I've done this at every school I work for. I pull up your FAFSA. I start asking you questions, getting documentation from you guys. In some cases, I've actually been able to, before the students even left my office with their family, told them, we can get you state aid, federal aid, and school aid of X amount of dollars. There's been some families that left my office and I've said, we can almost guarantee you $30,000 to $40,000 of help. Now, telling a family that's leaving my office who lost their job or lost their spouse or had a huge medical issue that don't worry, we can help you with $25,000, $30,000, or $35,000 of help of free money is a lot better case than I have no idea what's going to happen, fill out the forms, and here's some loan documents, good luck. Does everyone understand why you fill out the FAFSA no matter what? It'll be 45 minutes tops. It's an insurance policy just in case everything falls through. No one ever knows what's going to go wrong, but it's better to be covered just in case. Now the form on the right is filled out by some of you. It's called the CSS profile. Not every school requires a CSS. In the state of New Jersey, there's over 90 colleges. Of the 90 different colleges, only 2 require the CSS profile. The College of New Jersey is one of them, and Stevens Institute Technology is the other school. Those are the only 2 schools in all of New Jersey that require the CSS. If you are looking at Stevens, that means you have to do the CSS and the FAFSA. The 2 do not substitute each other. Now let's talk about FAFSA in depth. This is what the actual form looks like. Now, the federal government is slowly eliminating the paper version. They no longer want you to do the paper version going forward. What they do have available now, however, is called the FAFSA Worksheet. That's what you see here. The FAFSA Worksheet is essentially a cheat sheet for the FAFSA. The cheat sheet for the FAFSA Worksheet, you guys can print it out from online anytime you want. Very simple. You can either Google the term FAFSA Worksheet, and it'll give you a PDF of this, and you print it out. Or if you go onto the FAFSA site, which I'll give you in a moment, you can print it out from there and then take your time. The FAFSA Worksheet essentially follows the online version question for question. So if you want to sit down, take your time rather than going on the computer and trying to find its documents, you can do that. The FAFSA Worksheet, however, cannot be mailed in. It's one of the errors that scanners make all the time. On here, you said, do not mail in the worksheet. If you mail in the worksheet to the federal government, U.S. Department of Education, there's an address here. They do not do anything with it. They typically basically take it, put it in a giant pile, and shred it. No one knows you do the FAFSA, nothing's been accomplished. Does everyone understand? Okay, good. Now the FAFSA, one of the biggest changes going forward from here on in is that they're moving up the date of the FAFSA. Now this is the way it works. For senior parents this year, you guys are the only ones doing any documentation for financial aid. For juniors and below, everything is next academic year. They're moving it up, and I'll explain in a moment. For seniors, the FAFSA has been available since January 1st, so essentially 4 days ago. That's when it first becomes available. For senior parents, your goal is to have this form done between January 1st and February 15th, that 6-week window. That's when you want to get this form done. Now you're probably sitting there wondering, how do I do the FAFSA next week or 2 weeks from now? I haven't done my taxes yet. I don't even have my W-2s or 1099. Very simple. Use estimated numbers on your income and taxes paid. Okay? The way FAFSA works is this. It is first come, first served, but essentially what it comes down to is that there's 3 different deadlines for the FAFSA. The first deadline is the school's deadline. Most schools want this form in between February 15th and March 1st. The second deadline is the state of New Jersey's deadline, which is typically June 1st. And the third deadline is the federal government's deadline, which is essentially December of next academic year, but they don't want you to wait that long either. So your goal is to get this done before February 15th. The first time you fill out this form, of the 90 or so questions, technically only 8 need to be right. And people still, unfortunately, screw this up. Okay? First name, last name, social, and birthday of the student, and first name, last name, social, and birthday of the parent. Everything else on that form can technically be wrong, and you're still completing the form correctly the first time. Does everyone understand? Federal government form, 8 out of 90 questions, and you're fine. Anyone not understand? Okay, good. This is why. The first time you pull out the FAFSA, you will indicate that you will be filing taxes, not that you have completed taxes. So So the form already understands that these are estimated numbers. The reason you're doing it early is to lock in the dates. If you do this form, let's say January 10th or the 11th, and you go do your taxes in April, and you come back and make the changes in May, after you do your taxes, you're not losing out on any aid, you're not late. Does everyone understand? The first time you fill out the form, it's time-stamped. That's the date you filled out the first time. That means you covered all the deadlines. Now you have to make sure your income numbers are in range. So if you said, or if you think you made $100,000, it's okay to put on your FAFSA that you made $95,000 of income. And then when you get your taxes done and everything else, adjust the numbers. Does everyone understand? If you're not sure about numbers, do not estimate up. Do not guess upward. Always guess downward. Because it's easier for the school or yourself to change it later on if it's going up rather than it's going down. Does everyone understand so far? It's very important. Okay? Because I've seen both. I've seen parents that have adjusted a little bit downward, and I've also seen parents that completely lost their minds. Okay? If you made $100,000, you can't estimate you made $10,000. Does everyone understand? I've seen that before. Okay? I had one parent. There's always a question: how off can we be? And the real answer is about 10%. The threshold of error for FAFSA allows for up to 10% of error. Okay? That's what I'm saying. You can adjust a little bit, or if you're off by a little bit, they don't really care. Either you're going to fix it, or they're going to fix it later on. At the last university I worked at, Fairleigh Dickinson, I had one parent who was off by $450,000 on his income, and he was an accountant. Okay? Okay, nothing happened to him. We just changed the numbers, and he lost the aid. We had one, a widow, who actually said she had no income, no assets, no way of making any kind of income. She couldn't afford college at all. Of course, at that point, what happens is you get verified. If you have no income, no assets, the federal government, the state, and the schools want to know how you afford your lifestyle or living at all. So you get verified, which means they want your tax documents. And by the way, that's how they check everything, your tax documents. We asked for documents for taxes. Her taxes came in. She showed $90,000 of dividends. She showed no income, but she had $90,000 of dividends. Now, just because you're too rich to work does not mean you're poor. Okay, so all of a sudden, all her aid was gone as well. Now, neither person went to jail, so if you're wondering, you can make huge errors and nothing typically happens because someone catches it at some point in time. But you want to be as close to the numbers as possible. Any questions about that? No? Okay. Now, on the FAFSA form, two things that do not go on there. They keep put on there all the time, unfortunately. The first thing, your primary residence, where you live, does not go anywhere on the FAFSA. The equity of your home does not go on the FAFSA. The second error that parents make all the time, any retirement accounts you have, 401ks, IRAs, Roths, those things do not go on the FAFSA. The amount that you have in your 401k does not go on the FAFSA. The amount you have in your IRA does not go in the FAFSA. Okay? Now here is the actual website. This is where you guys fill out the FAFSA form. This is the actual place you go. If you Google the word FAFSA, those 4.6 million websites pop up. There are not 4.6 million places to fill this out. This is the website you fill it out. Okay? www.fafsa.gov. There used to be www.fafsa.ed.gov, but they shortened it to basically this website here. This is what the site actually looks like. The site here allows you to submit the form for free. There's no charge when you go here. If you go to the .com sites, the sites are charging you, all they're going to do is charge you to get the same information that's going to go over here. So there's really no reason to be charged online to the FAFSA form. Okay? You know you're on the right site if you see the screen here. So the screen actually looks like an actual screenshot. If you see a bunch of smiling kids, you're on the right side. By the way, there isn't a single smiling parent on any of these college sites. Just be honest. Now here is a new process. And for juniors, what's changing for you guys is that next year, they're starting a process called prior. You've already heard this. What prior means is that the FAFSA is being moved up from January 1st start date to October 1st start date. That's when you can start doing it for seniors next year. So for juniors this year, next academic year, when you're senior parents, at that point the FAFSA becomes available October 1st, a lot earlier. The way they're doing it is they're taking the 2015 tax information to be used for the October FAFSA. Does everyone understand? So whatever was going to happen for your taxes for 15, those are the numbers you guys are using for your senior year, which is going to be your freshman year's financial aid package for juniors. For seniors, your 2015 tax numbers will be used for their freshman year financial aid forms and their sophomore year financial aid. Does everyone understand? Because for seniors, you're using the same year twice, because for juniors, they're moving it up. Any questions about that? Yes. For senior parents, your 2015 taxes will be used for the 2016 FAFSA and the 2017 FAFSA. Okay? For juniors, you'll be using this tax year that just passed, the 2015 taxes, in senior year for their freshman financial aid. Okay? Are we all good? Okay, good. Now here is new process for everyone. This new process started roughly around April or so of last academic year. Now, what's going on at this point in time is this. If you've done a FAFSA form in the past, use PIN numbers, personal identification numbers assigned to FAFSA for students and parents. Going forward, there is no more PIN numbers anymore. What they're doing now is they want you to go on this website here and create usernames and passwords. You basically have to go here and create one account for the student and also create one account for the parent. Okay? You can go on this site here first and start the process, or at the end of the FAFSA, they'll ask you to create the usernames for both parent and student. For the parent, it could be either parent. You only need to do it for one parent, not both. This form here is a lot more in-depth than the PIN numbers. First thing it asks you for is an email address. Use a personal email address. Do not use your student's high school email address or your work email address, because you're going to be using this email address for the financial aid stuff for at least the next 4 to 5 years. So in case you lose or move from your job, or obviously your students leave the high school, you don't have access to the email, it's going to be an issue. So use a personal email. The personal email for parent and student must be different. It cannot be the same. Okay? So the student needs an email and the parent needs an email. The username is the next thing that it asks you to do. It's going to say, create a username. The username for the parent and the student must also be different. It cannot be the same. Okay? So email and username must be different. They're going to ask you 6 additional questions. Those 6 additional questions can be the same for student and parent. The 6 additional questions are basically security questions. You can choose basically 4 of them, but of the 4 that you choose, there's technically 6 in total. Of the 6, the passwords and the usernames, the passwords and the questions you choose can be the same for the student and parent. So they basically want from you guys 8 different items, okay? Of the 8 different items, 2 have to be unique, email and username. The other 6 basically can be the same. So their password can be the same as your password. Your security questions can be the same as their security questions to make everything simple. Does everyone understand so far? Okay? If you get overwhelmed with this process, there's a safe kind of catch aspect of it. It's impossible to mess this up. They will not let you finish the FAFSA, will not let you submit the FAFSA without the username. So it's impossible not to go through this process. During this process, if you get logged off or anything else, you can log right back in. If you lose your username or your password, they'll send it to your email. That's why you have to have access to that email. Does everyone understand? It's a new process for everyone. Okay? We're good? Yes, sorry. Yes, good question. Once you create the username and password, you can actually go in there. It's called bring it back here. Right here. Does everyone see down here? There's basically 2 tabs. There's create an ID and there's edit your ID. So if you go back in, you can actually create your ID. Once you create it, you can go in there and edit it. So if you want to change the email or the address or the phone number or the security questions, you can do so after you create the account. Okay? Now here is what FAFSA counts. It counts cash. Yeah, sorry.
Can you speak to why you need an account for the parent and one for the student in terms of maybe a different type of communications that you can receive?
Why do you need 2, you mean?
Yeah, why do you need 2 separate? Would you both get the same communications, or would there be difference for each?
I
part.
understand. The question is, why do you have to have two different accounts to sign the FAFSA form at the end? And the reason is because of this. The FAFSA form is technically student-specific, which means they expect the student to fill out this information. Do not, under any circumstance, have your student fill out this information. It's the most problems I've ever seen in every college I've ever worked for. Since it's student-specific and they want the student to fill us out, they want the student at the end to sign off and say, yes, the information on here is correct. The reason they want the parents to sign off is because the reality is most of the information, financially speaking, is the parent's information. So they want the student to sign off saying, yes, my portion is correct, and the parent to sign off saying, yes, the income and assets are correct. That's why they want two different people signing off, and they want you to create two different accounts. The main reason they want you to create two different accounts and they've made it more secure is mostly because, at least from what we've seen, what we've been told, is because the IRS was hacked about 7 months ago. And since the IRS was hacked, and it's a government site, since this site has a lot of information, they want to make it more security. That's why they're asking more questions and making it more stringent for you to get all the process complete. Okay? Any other questions about the process?
Sorry, just to clarify, so the student will not see the asset portion of the FAFSA?
Well, this is the way it works. When you, on the form itself, up here, if you'll notice, it actually says that the individual applying for the ID, the username and password, must be that specific individual. Which means if you're doing the FAFSA for your student, perfectly fine. However, they have to be the ones that create the username and password by law. Okay? Now, if you're filling out the financial aid forms and you get to the section about finances, and all of a sudden you tell them, you know what, you don't need to be here anymore, they leave the room, then it's up to you what you put on the financial aid form. Does everyone understand? Unfortunately, the camera on me, there's only so much I can say. If you have any additional questions, come up to me at the end. We're no longer filming, and I'll explain to you what you need to do. Okay? Now here are the assets that are counted on the FAFSA. Cash, savings, stocks, mutual funds, second homes. There is one question about the retirement accounts on the FAFSA, and this is where the error always happens. The FAFSA will ask you how much you contribute to your retirement account. What that basically means is this. In 2015, if you have a 401k and there's $50,000 in it, and you contributed $5,000, what does not go on the FAFSA is the $50,000 total. What only goes on the FAFSA is the $5,000 you contributed. That's it. Does everyone understand? Good. Sorry, we have a question?
I'm a little bit confused, I'm sorry. What's the difference between the FAFSA.gov and the one set up? FAFSA.ed.
Oh, these two sites are actually essentially the same. On the site here, you see here it says FSA ID.
Yeah, my eyes aren't that good.
Oh, sorry. I know it's a small one. Up here, you can either go to the FAFSA and get the ID, or you can go directly to the site here and get the ID. If you try to log into the FAFSA with either button here, it's going to let you log in two ways. The first way it's going to let you log in is by saying, I want to create an ID now, essentially. The second way is by your first name, last name, social, and birthday of the student. But at the end of that process, if you go in that way, it's still going to ask you for the username and password to sign the form. So either way, either you start here, or you press these two buttons, and then they send you here again, or you go here before, or you go at the end. There's basically 4 different ways they stop you before you even submit the form. So they're going to make you get the username and password no matter what you do. Okay? Now, when it comes to this stuff here, there's always a question. Do they ask for bank statements or brokerage accounts, or how do they know we're being honest about the money in the bank or the savings or CDs or bonds? Very simple. Every school asks for tax documentation. Most of them ask for the tax transcript, which essentially is a copy of your tax return, your 1040. On your 1040 is all the information the schools want from you. On the 1040, line 7 shows if you're a W-2 employee or not. Line 8A and 9A show interest and dividends. So if you tell the school on the financial aid forms, FAFSA or CSS, we have no financial, we have no assets, no cash, no savings or anything, they're going to ask you for taxes. If they see you have money in line 8A or 9A for dividends or cash or interest, They're just take that number and they're going to add into your form what they think you have in there. Does everyone understand? Lines 12 and 18 are for corporations or S-corps or LLCs, or if you have a second property that you're renting. That's how they know if you have a second property. Line 13 shows alimony. One of the questions on here is about child support. Child support does not show up on the taxes. So if for whatever reason it's late at night, you're rushing through the form, it's due tomorrow, you forget to answer the child support question, and you skip it by accident, then you skipped it by accident. Does everyone who needs to understand what that means understand what that means? Once again, I am on film, so I can only go so far with this. Okay? Any questions about the assets that you would not count? No? Okay. Now here's the next step. On the FAFSA form, oh yes, sorry.
What if, like, a grandparent has a 529 in your child's name? It doesn't show up on our tax return.
Technically, a college savings plan of 529 does not show up anywhere on tax return. The reason being is because they're tax-free as far as the gains you have on the 529. Now, the way a 529 basically works is you have the principal, i.e. the parent or grandparent, then you have the beneficiary. The beneficiary is not technically the person who owns the asset, which means if grandma, grandpa, or uncle and aunt have 529 as the principal and your student's the beneficiary, and then all of a sudden for some reason they get annoyed with your student and switch over to the beneficiary, it's no longer in that person's name, it shouldn't be showing up on any financial aid form. Okay? Since there's a camera on me, there's another answer that's more in-depth. If you want to come up to me at the end, I can explain it in more in-depth aspects. Okay? Now, when it comes to the 529, it doesn't show up any one of the taxes because unless you take out more than the college cost, the IRS doesn't care because then they can't penalize you the 10% for taking out more than you're supposed to. Does everyone understand? Who needs to understand? If not, once again, I will be here, so will Kelly at the end. Come up to the end, and I'll explain to you in further detail what it actually means. Okay? Now, for business owners, or for anyone in the audience, on the FAFSA form, there's going to be two questions you get to. If you don't have a business, it doesn't mean you made an error. These are two standard questions. Question one is, what is the value of your business? On the FAFSA form, ask that of everyone. If you are self-employed, if you have your own corporation, your own business, partnership, whatever it is, and if you have less than 100 employees, the question is to be answered as 0. That's what the federal government wants you to put. My company is worth nothing. I have less than 100 employees. The second question I'm going to ask you is, what's the value of your farm? It asks that of everyone. Did not make an error. If you do have a farm, you have less than 100 employees, it's 0 as well. Does everyone understand? Please understand that question. Nope. Okay, good. Now here is the actual formula. This is the actual formula used by the federal government, i.e. the schools in the state of New Jersey, to figure out your expected family contribution. Yes?
I actually have already filled out the form, and it said that you can press some button somewhere that when you do fill out your 2016 taxes, it will automatically populate that
The
information
IRS
for you.
receivable.
Is that on the form? Because I didn't see it anywhere, or is it on your 1040? Where is that button?
No, I understand. The way it works is this. The first time you got to do the FAFSA, it's got to be estimated because you haven't done your taxes yet. Once you do your taxes, if you wait 2 weeks after your taxes are done, and then go back and do the FAFSA, it's going to automatically ask you, do you want to do the IRS retrieval? What the IRS retrieval will do is, it will link up with your tax return to your FAFSA. By doing that, it automatically makes your FAFSA in the eyes of financial aid 100% correct. There's essentially nothing wrong with your FAFSA. The way it works is, the reason you need 2 weeks after you do your taxes is because it needs 2 weeks to process throughout the IRS system. Once it does that, then it allows the government, the FAFSA form, to upload your tax return into the FAFSA. If you have your first name, last name, social or birthday incorrect, it will not let you do so. That's why the first name, last name, social, and birthday of student and parent must be correct, so it doesn't screw up the process. Okay? By doing the IRS retrieval, it's the simplest way of correcting the FAFSA. Once you upload your taxes, there's essentially nothing else you have to change, other than going to the end of the FAFSA and submitting it again. It's a very simple process. Okay. Yes?
For everyone that doesn't have senior gender control,
Yes, for juniors and below, you technically will have all your tax documentation. The income, taxes paid, the date you fill it out. The tricky part is the cash, savings, stocks, investments, and everything else that go on there as well. So those things obviously fluctuate because they change daily. Your own stocks, they change daily. If you are paying bills, the savings change daily. So that's one aspect that will change depending on the day you're filling out the form. And what they ask you is, how much do you have in cash savings as of today? How much do you have in stocks, bonds, mutual funds as of today? So if anything moves or changes before that date, then things move and change before that date. Okay? Now here is the formula they use to figure out your expected family contribution. This is going to give you an idea of how they come up with their numbers. There's 4 parts to this. I'm going to start from the bottom and work our way up. If I lose anyone, just raise your hand, because these things have changed a lot over the last 2 years. Starting from the bottom, students' assets. Students are not giving any asset protection, which means any money in their name, they want 20% of it to go towards the cost of college. So if you put on the financial aid forms that your student has $1,000 in the checking account, they will want $200 of that to be the first of the 4 parts they add together for the expected family contribution. Part 2, students' income. Students are allowed to make up to $3,500 before any money counts against them. Typically, anything over $3,500 counts at 50 cents on the dollar. It's supposed to be about $6,000, but the state of New Jersey starts roughly around $3,500. So we start with $3,500 across the board. Okay? So once you make anything over $3,500, they want half of that to go towards the cost of college. So if your student made $4,000, put $4,000 on the FAFSA, $500 remaining, $250. Part 2. Part 3, parents' assets. This is where it gets very tricky. About 2 years ago, the federal government what they were doing was this. They said, we will give the parents roughly $1,000 of protection on their assets for the age of the oldest parent. What that basically meant was this. If the oldest parent in the household is 55 years old, that basically meant you have $55,000 protection against your assets. So let's say you had all the money in the world was $30,000. You put the $30,000 on the FAFSA. They didn't count it at all towards the college cost. Because essentially you're under that threshold of the $50,000. Does everyone understand so far? Unfortunately, over the last 2 years, they've cut that number by about 60%. Roughly now, the easiest way for me to explain how it works is this. If you are between the ages of 45 to about 55, you're given about $35,000 of protection. Any money above that, they typically count against you essentially at a rate of 5.6%. Okay? So now you start thinking, okay, our student has no protection and their money counts at 20% towards college. Any money in our name, we have about $30,000 to $35,000 protection of that asset, and it counts at roughly 5.6%. Things you might want to do before you fill out the financial aid forms. Okay? Part 4, parents' income. It's a sliding scale. The more you make, the more they want you to contribute. You're looking up there and wondering, do they want 20% of my income, 30%, or 40%? The easiest way to look at it is this. They basically want 20% all the way up to $200,000. So if you are making, I mean adjusted gross income, line 37 on the front of your 1040. If you make about $100,000 a year, they roughly want you to pay roughly around $20,000 towards the cost of college for one student. If you're making $150,000, they want $30,000. At $200,000, they roughly want you to pay $40,000 towards the cost of college. As the income starts getting higher, they start taking more percentage from that income. They add these 4 parts together, and that's how they come up with your expected family contribution. Yes?
Is that a couple or is that as an individual?
All together, as a family unit. Now you're probably looking at this and wondering, how can I calculate this, or should I calculate this myself? You don't have to copy this whole thing, and by the way, we get this entire presentation to the guidance office, so everyone has access to it. What you can do is go to College Board. On College Board, they have an EFC calculator, much easier way of doing this. Lets you play with the numbers. You can basically say, what if my student does work? Let's say they make $5,000 over the summer. How will this affect us? Or what if I take that overtime? Or what if I take the part-time job? What if we don't do those things? What if for whatever reason, all the money in the student's name was now in our name? What about money in their name and our name was under the mattress? These are the things you can do with the calculators. Does everyone understand? Okay? That you cannot do by filling out the form. What I mean by that is this. Once you submit any financial aid form, they have the information, which means if you fill out the form and you put a bunch of numbers on there, maybe you didn't want to put on there, or you incorrectly put on there, they have that information. You can't go into the FAFSA and decide, you know what, I didn't like our number, let's take our assets out. It doesn't work that way. They have the first FAFSA you submitted. The calculators on the College Board site do not go anywhere. It lets you play with numbers before you fill out any forms. Yes?
So one of these two formulas must take into account a second child in college?
Yes, we'll talk about that in a moment.
Okay.
Now let's talk the second form, or I guess let's talk the third form. The second form you'll all be filling out is called the HESA form. That's HESAA.org. The HESA form is done at the end of the FAFSA. At the end of the FAFSA form, if you have any state schools in New Jersey on your form, Princeton, Rutgers, Williams-Patterson, Montclair, FU, any school in the state of New Jersey on your FAFSA, the state of New Jersey requires you to answer 8 additional questions to get state aid from New Jersey. The way you fill out the form is very simple. Once you complete the FAFSA, at the end of the FAFSA is a confirmation screen. On the confirmation screen, it's going to say, we notice you have a state school on your FAFSA. Do you want to complete the state required questions? Click here. Click on that link. It opens up the HESA site directly to the 8 questions. If you forget to click on there, you can't go back to the FAFSA. They only give you one shot at it. What you have to do is go directly onto the state site, which is HESA, HESAA.org. On the HESA site, then you have to create an account, then answer the questions. If you go straight from the FAFSA will create an account for your student, so all you have to do is answer the 8 additional questions. Makes it very simple. Now the third form you have to fill out is the CSS profile. The CSS profile is done on College Board. Okay? On the College Board site, if your student has already taken the SATs, you're logging in through their SAT account. Their information is combined with everything. Their SAT account is the same company, same corporation, same website that's doing the CSS. Okay? It's all done on College Board. There's no paper version. It's been eliminated years and years ago. On the College Board site, for the CSS, it's completely different from the FAFSA. First, the CSS is typically available October 1st, so it's been available for months now. Some schools want this form in November, some in December, some in January, some in March, some in February. All the schools who want this form want it in a different date for whatever reason. The easiest thing to do to find out if the school even needs the CSS, go on to College Board. On College Board, they have a list of every college that requires it. If it does require it, call the school's financial aid office and ask them, when do you need this form by? Because some schools want this earlier than the FAFSA. Now the CSS profile is completely different from the FAFSA in that form that's not free. There's a $25 charge for the first school and $16 for each additional school going forward. Another thing that's different about the CSS, if you submit the CSS, you cannot go back in and make changes to the numbers you've already submitted to that school. On the CSS, there's a standard anywhere between 370 to 400 questions. And there's actually up to 5,000 questions they can ask you. The reason, and no one's ever done that many, believe me, the most university is like 425. Okay? Every school that requires a CSS has the option of asking additional supplemental questions at the end that they want answered. Okay? That's why you hear the weird questions about what kind of car you drive, what car your student drives, how much consumer debt do you have, do the grandparents or uncle and aunts have any money set aside for the student? All those crazy questions, or is there any money in the siblings' names, are all asked on this form here. Okay? If you get overwhelmed with either the FAFSA or the CSS, there are save buttons. Do not rush, especially not this form here. Okay? If you're uncertain about a question, and one of the questions on this form here that almost every parent calls our organization about, because it makes no sense, is how much do you think, as a parent, you can pay toward your student's education next year? They actually ask this question. If you want, you can put $0, $1, $200, you can put whatever you want. they're not going to take that into consideration at all, to be honest with you. Okay? Because if they think you can pay 20 based on the form, and you say you can pay 5,000, they're still going to tell you you need to pay 20,000. Does everyone understand? There's also a lot of questions on here that are very tricky. If you're going through the form, and you get to question 220, 230, and you think you're hallucinating, you're not hallucinating. They're going to ask you the same question 3 to 4 different ways as you go through the form. The reason I think they do that is to catch you, unfortunately. This form here is created by the same company that does the SATs, okay? Put that in perspective, unfortunately. If you don't know an answer, if you're uncertain about an answer, just put 0. Do not create an answer, do not magically think of an answer, just put 0. If the answer is wrong, they'll ask you for documentation and they'll fix it. The worst thing you can do in any of these forms is estimate too high or put numbers on there that should not be on there. Does everyone understand? Okay? The more errors you make, the more aid you will lose throughout the process. Your goal is to make errors on the low side, not the high side. Now this form here requires basically everything. It wants to know about the house, your primary residence. It wants to know about retirement assets. It wants to know about money in the uncle's name, grandparents' name, everyone's name, anything associated with your student going out to college. They want the information. Now once again, both the FAFSA and CSS is checked by your tax return. Your tax return does not show how much is your retirement. Your tax return does not show what the value of your property is. Your tax return does not show child support. Okay? I can only go so far with that because once again, we are on film. If you have any questions, come up to me at the end. I'll explain in further detail. Now, doing college, question just popped up before. How does this work? Essentially, when you're sending off a student one off to school, now we're using even numbers to make the math easy. By the way, they do not need to go to the same college. So student one goes off to school. Let's say the school costs $35,000 a year. You fill out all the forms, and the forms say you can pay $20,000, which means you have $15,000 of financial need. The school has to help you with scholarships, grants, loans, and work study of that amount, or hopefully close to that amount. Year 2 comes around, or you have twins going at the same time. So you have 2 students going to school, $35,000 apiece, just to make the math easy. That means $70,000 in total cost. You fill out all the forms again, and the forms once again say you can pay $20,000. However, you're not paying $20,000 for student 1 and $20,000 for student 2. You're now paying $10,000 for student 1 and $10,000 for student 2. What has now happened is for student 1, they went from having $15,000 space to $25,000. There's more availability for them to receive financial aid. Does everyone understand? Having students overlapping in college is actually, in most cases, one of the most beneficial aspects because it gives universities more space to give you more financial aid. It's very beneficial, believe it or not. Now here are the frequently made errors every year on the form. The number 1 made error every year is a social security number. If you do not know your social, if you do not know your student social, ask, check the taxes, do not guess. The social is the number 1 made error every year. The second made error, this happened a bunch of times at every university. If you do not know your student's birthday, you do not know your spouse's birthday, and this happened about 4 different times at FDU while I was there, right in front of me. If you've been lying to your spouse about your birthday, it's time to come clean. You'd be surprised at things I've seen in financial aid. 4 things have to be right for student and parent. First name, last name, social, and birthday. That's it. Everything else can be wrong, and you're fine. Okay? The other, unfortunately, made error, I guess the biggest error, the reason I tell parents all the time, do not, under any circumstance, have your student fill out this form. About 5 years ago, I was at Fairleigh Dickinson, as one of the directors, as one of the counselors bring me a FAFSA form and say, Ed, I can't figure out what the error with the FAFSA form is. It will not process for federal aid. It will not process for state aid. It won't go through the system. I asked who filled the FAFSA, they said the student. So I already knew what to look for. Within about 30 seconds, I found the problem. Father's name, Dad. Mother's name, Mom. It's not legally your name. Maybe your household's your name. I don't even try to be funny, but legally, not your name. And that's one of the reasons I tell parents, do not have your students fill out these forms. Because of that error, and because of the fact that most of the financial information they want from you is from the parents anyways. Okay? Now, what happens next? Very simple. Get all the financial aid stuff out of the way as soon as possible. Because your goal is to start receiving these right here, the financial aid award letters as soon as possible. Once your student's been accepted, and once they have the FAFSA, the HESA, the CSS, and all the rest of the forms, they typically will start sending out award letters. The award letters will show the scholarships, the grants, the loans, and the work program. Everything that school is willing to offer your student to attend. The sooner you get these, the better you are on the process. Once you are accepted and have the award letter, essentially the shift in power has changed from the college to you. Because now the universities want deposits. They want you guys to give them money saying, yes, I'm going to your institution. So essentially, you now have the power in your hands. Your power runs out on May 1st. Because May 1st of senior year is National Deposit Day. The last day they'll accept a deposit for your student to go there. Beforehand is essentially negotiation phase, or let's make a deal process. We're only asked, how do you negotiate with a college? It's really simple. You have to first make sure the schools are equivalent with each other. What that means is, Monmouth, Seton Hall, Ryder, Drew, Fairleigh Dickinson, all these schools compete with each other. Sacred Heart, New Haven, they all are on the same tier, all applying or all wanting the same kind of student, academically speaking. Which means you can use one school against another and ask for additional funds. The way it works is this. School A is where your student really wants to go. School A has given your student a $15,000 scholarship or grant. School B, equivalent to School A, as far as tiers, has given your student a $22,000 or $23,000 scholarship or grant. You can just go back to School A and say, thank you for the $15,000, we appreciate the assistance, but do you know School B here is giving us $23,000. If you can increase your package or getting closer to the B school year, will be more inclined to deposit and send a student off to your institution. Most of these schools do not care about a few $1,000s, but if you can have a scholarship or grant increased by $3,000, $4,000 over 4 years, you're talking about tens of thousands of dollars of savings over the course of a 4-year process. Your goal is to negotiate as much as possible before your student goes off to college, because this will be the baseline of all financial aid going forward every year. Does everyone understand? Good. Yes?
What is the best way to do that? An email or a phone call?
Good question. When it comes to negotiation, it typically depends on the school. What I mean by that is this. University's grant has become very popular lately, is extremely generous. Over the last 3 or so years, I just told students and parents, once you get the scholarship numbers or once you get the grant numbers, just call Scranton. I've had at least half a dozen students who called Scranton over the phone, have their scholarship and grants increased right over the phone. Nothing else necessary. Fairleigh Dickinson, down the road here, also similar situation. You can negotiate via email, or you can just walk in there and negotiate with them. Fairleigh Dickinson, very school to negotiate. Very, very easy school to negotiate with. Other schools are going to want to see the package, especially if it's a competing school. So if you're considering calling a certain school and saying, you guys gave us 15, the other school gave us 40, they're going to want to see the 40. So if the 40 doesn't exist, we're going to have a problem. Okay? So you have to make sure whatever you're telling them is close to, if not the truth. Yes?
When it comes to scholarships or grants, back to the point earlier, are you negotiating with the Hollywood or the mission school?
Good question. Once you have the actual award letter, which shows all the different numbers, at that point you can negotiate through financial aid. They'll basically go to the admissions office on your behalf, asking for additional funding. Negotiating for scholarships can be almost anything we throw in there. If your income has gone down, throw it in there. If you have another student who's paying tuition in high school, throw it in there. If the student's GPA their senior year has increased, throw it in there. If they took the SAT or ACT scores and they have a higher score taking it again in December or January, throw that in there. If they got the Eagle Award or if they got the Gold Award, throw that in there. Your goal is to throw everything against the wall, try to increase the package, no matter what it is. We have a parent from Kent Place. She has a student going to Oberlin. At Oberlin, her scholarship started roughly around $14,000. Over the course of about 3 months, she had contacted them via email, fax, phone, visit. They've increased it from $14,000 to $24,000. I think it's mostly due to the fact that they just wanted to say, here you go, leave us alone, enough. Okay? But she just kept on going for it. And before she knew it, she basically went from $14,000 to $24,000 in scholarship. And the scholarship is the best thing to negotiate because the scholarship is typically guaranteed for 4 years. which means you have that money every year going forward. You have to realize you have to negotiate. If you're scared to see someone up front, you can't negotiate your car because the salesman scares you, then use email. Okay, you don't have to be in front of that person, but the goal is to negotiate as much as possible. Because every $1,000 you save now will end up being 10 plus thousand 4 years down the road. Now, we talked in the beginning about schools that cost 40, 50, 60. Unfortunately, schools now cost $70,000 a year. And you're pricing, they're wondering, well, those are the schools that need to be off the list automatically because we can't afford it. That's typically the worst thing you can do. The first thing you have to understand is that just because a school costs 60 or 70,000 sticker price does not mean that's what you're paying. Behind me, we have two colleges, two universities. Sorry. Cornell University, upstate New York, private college. Montclair State Public University here in New Jersey. The difference between the two is not that one is better than the other or one's a better fit. It's really what we're showing you here is the financial capability of a private school versus a public institution. At Montclair altogether, you're looking at about $27,000, room, board, books, transportation, the whole thing. Let's say you fill out all the forms, and the forms say you can make $10,000. Subtract that out, you're left with $17,000 of need. Unfortunately, Montclair cannot meet 100% of need being a state institution. They don't have enough funding. Typically, what they'll need is about 11,000 of the 17,400 you need help with, which means you're paying 10, they just tacked on another 6 or so. Making matters worse, of the 11 they're going to help you with, only 4,000 or so is grant money, which means the rest is loans and work programs you must work towards. So the true cost of Montclair is not the 10,000 the form said. The true cost of Montclair is double that, or more than double that, excuse me. Cornell, on the other hand, one of these 65 plus schools, which will be 70 in the next year or two, subtract out the 10,000 the form said you can pay, you're left with $55,000 of need. Cornell, historically, for decades, has met 100% of need. A few years back, they essentially eliminated the loan portion, meaning any aid you need at Cornell will be given to you in the form of a grant, 100%, which means if you're supposed to pay 10, that's what you're paying at Cornell. And the $55,000 of help will be grant money, money you're not paying back. So where does Ed get the magical numbers? 100, 63, 36. Very simple. College Board. On College Board, it has all this information for free. Okay? You can type in any school's name, click on the pay tab. It'll show you the average financial aid package. It'll show you how much they give out in financial aid, how much of that is gift aid, the free money, the stuff you guys want. The goal is to do the research beforehand, because then that way you understand what's going to happen later on down the line. Does everyone understand? Good. Now here is a loan portion. The reason that I say at the beginning that the term financial aid is not the right term to use is because once you fill out the FAFSA form, once it's completed, your student is automatically offered a federal direct loan of $5,500. Does everyone understand? Which means you fill out the FAFSA, you can be destitute or a millionaire, and your student will be offered a $5,500 loan. That's why when the schools say, don't worry, we can give you financial aid, they can get you financial aid because it's automatically offered to you in the form of a loan. The first loan you're going to get is your student's name. You fill out the FAFSA, they get a direct loan. The direct loan breaks into two categories, typically for most of you. 3,500 of it will be subsidized. 2,000 of the 55 will be unsubsidized. What that basically means is, subsidized means the federal government is paying the interest on that loan while your student's in school. Up to 6 months after they graduate, then the interest starts on the subsidized. For the unsub, it means the interest starts immediately. There's no one paying that interest for you guys. The loan is in the student's name. These two loans here are paid back 6 months after the student graduates. It's in their name. It's basically over 10, 15, or 20 years. You can essentially decide how long you want to pay that. The other loan you're going to get accustomed to hearing, called the PLUS loan. Every school will tell you guys to apply for the PLUS loan or advise you to look into the PLUS loan for additional options for funding college. I like the PLUS loan and I don't like the PLUS loan. I like the PLUS loan because number one, it allows you to take out as much as you need. So the school costs $60,000, take the whole $60,000 with the PLUS loan. The reason I don't like the PLUS loan is because PLUS stands for Parent Loan for Undergrad Studies, which means the student has Nothing to do with this loan whatsoever. So if your student falls into the 5-year trap, and you're taking $60,000 out every year, and you have $300,000 in debt, it's graduation, your caps are flying, and you're about to tell them, I need you to help me pay this $2,500 a month loan, and they say to you, I don't want to pay anything, they don't have to pay anything. Their name is nowhere on that note. That's technically your own private loan. These loan companies behind you, though, will allow you to take a loan in the student's name. They will need a cosigner more than likely the first year or two, but unfortunately, they don't have any credit yet, they're teenagers, but some of these loan companies will actually allow the teenager, after about a year or so, to take out the loan themselves for years 3 and 4, because you have already established your credit with that company by you co-signing the first year or 2. Okay? These loan companies, once again, will let you take out the loan in the student's name. Number one benefit of putting the loan in the student's name, it builds your credit. The lender, their credit agencies do not care who pays it back. Them, the parent, the grandparent, as long as somebody's paying it back, it builds your credit. Second reason, tax benefits. If your income is above $100,000, you're basically eliminating any tax benefits you have. Since the students, when they graduate, very unlikely will be making anywhere near $100,000, they will get tax benefits going forward to basically deduct the interest. The same way you guys deduct the interest with the mortgage. So it's always more beneficial to put the loan in the student's name than the parent's name. Now here is our newsletter. I forgot to mention this at the beginning, but if you have the yellow sheet, on the yellow sheet, if you want us to send you out the newsletter, and our newsletter goes out every month, telling juniors and seniors what you're supposed to be doing for that specific month. Just print your email, okay? Turn in the sheet. If you print your email, we'll send you the newsletter. On the newsletter, we tell you what to be doing that month. We talk about SATs, ACTs, we talk about financial aid forms, different changes in the process. We talk about social media. One of the things that has become very prevalent over the last 2 or 3 years, that admissions officers, and I know a few of them, and they've told me this, are going on Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat. If your student has an account and it's public, they'll access it. If they don't like what they see, your student might be rejected because of that aspect. I've had at least 2 different admissions officers tell me, student was accepted, went on Facebook, student was rejected. Does everyone understand? If you do not like what they have on their Facebook page, either change the name or do not make it public. It has to be private. You do not want to find out later on it was because of some stupid prank or some funny picture as a 16-year-old that was no longer funny when they were 20. Okay? Second thing, when it comes to the college admissions process, the email has to be appropriate. There is no hot 18, there's no hot anything, there's no lukewarm, there's nothing. Okay? Does everyone understand? You'd be surprised the kind of emails I've seen from these teenagers. If you do not think it's appropriate, then you are not giving them the credit card to pay for that application. Do you understand? Okay? Good. Everything has to be appropriate across the board. Now here is the most important website we talked about here tonight. FAFSA, #1 resource for financial aid, where you fill out the FAFSA form for juniors starting in October, for seniors starting now. FastWeb and FinAid, these are the 2 largest scholarship searches in the world. Also free scholarship searches. You do not have to pay for anything on these 2 sites. They have scholarships for academics, for major, for region, for religion, for background, for women over 6 feet tall, for speaking Klingon, for palm duct tape, Coca-Cola, Pepsi, all that stuff, all that nonsense, for free, right here. You do not pay anyone for scholarship searches. Okay? Here's our social media stuff. We do have a Facebook page and a Twitter. On the Twitter, we talk about usually most of the new stuff popping up. Schools going into Super Score ACT, schools doing SAT, ACT optional. We talk about new trends, we talk about new school programs, we talk about different scams that parents are falling for, or things we see popping up. Our Twitter feed is kind of like a news reel of what's going on in the college admissions and financial aid process. If you want to follow us, just basically look us up for Principia NP. And here's our contact information. We do have a Principia website, and it does have an email. We'll give you the Gmail email because for whatever reason the server is acting up. I'm not sure why.